Here's a junky looking late 60s Philco-Ford AM clock radio. I found this in a box of junk whenever I was straightening up the building. Around here we don't throw out anything whenever I decide to go on a cleaning spree. I just simply rearrange the stuff that's already here. But yeah, as you can see, it's kind of crusty looking, and I almost threw it in the trash, but I said, no, I'll make a YouTube time waster video. I've already got the back removed, and you can see it's fairly cruddy inside. No, it's not fairly cruddy, it's very cruddy. Let's plug it in and see what happens. It's one of those sets, I really don't care what happens to it. I heard a little pop in the speaker, but absolutely no activity whenever I rotate the tuning and volume controls. So let's pull it apart, see if we can make it play with as little effort as possible. Okay, here's our chassis, a 6 transistor chassis, which is a little bit surprising for a cheap clock radio. Most of these AM transistorized clock radios only had 4 or 5 transistors on the chassis. And one of the terminals on the clock motor was broken, so that's the reason the clock wasn't working, and this is pretty much going to ensure that the clock never works in this set. But like I said, I don't care anyway. This is just a time waster project. And if the rotor capsule is good, I'll probably use it in another radio that's around here that is worthy of repair. Before I do anything, I'll just go ahead and spray the volume control pot, because if the cruddiness of this radio is any indication, well, you know the volume control needs cleaning, and then we'll go from there. I'll just spray this stuff in the volume control where the terminals enter the volume control, and then work the control back and forth several times, and that'll take care of the cleaning procedure. Okay, this thing is totally dead except for some pops in the speaker from time to time, and when I touch the center of the volume control, I get no buzz in the speaker, which tells me the trouble is either audio related or power supply related. Let's see what our voltage is on this main filter capacitor. Watch the meter here. Got about 140 volts. Okay, now we'll trace that through our dropping resistor and see what we have on the low voltage side. We'll look at the low voltage filter capacitor. Got about 28 volts there, so voltage is reaching that point. Now we'll test our voltages on the audio output transistor and the audio driver transistor. Okay, checking our voltages on the audio output transistor. On the collector we have 142 volts. That shouldn't be that high, I wouldn't think. About 80 to 100, I believe. On the base, I believe this is the base, we have 14 volts. That I don't go along with that, at least not at the present time anyway. And on the emitter we have Zippo, so I think we need to investigate this audio output stage. Okay, I think I found the problem. It's the audio output transistor. It's not bad, but the leads had corroded, and whenever I removed the transistor, part of the lead just fell off. So I cleaned the remaining leads real good with sandpaper, and I'm going to attempt to solder on some longer leads here, and that way I can solder this back to the circuit board and it make good connection. Like I said, I'm not going to spend any money on this set or spend any great amount of time on it. This is more or less a time waster project, just to see if I can get it going without too much trouble, because I'll probably end up throwing this thing in the garbage anyway. And here we are with a couple of soldered on lead extensions. Let's see if I can fit it all back in here now. Just to be on the safe side, I slid a couple of pieces of heat shrink tubing over that, just to help ensure that those solder connections don't make contact with this heat sink, which, by the way, ties to the collector of the transistor. That would cause a major problem if these leads were to short out to the collector. Okay, transistor soldered back in, everything checks out. Let's apply power and see what happens. Well, we have some audio now. See if we can get any stations on this thing. Okay, no stations, so this is one that the rodents did a great deal of damage to. Well, that was easy enough. Apparently I forgot to turn the volume control up.
Losing streak for the Jazz's streak of 6 consecutive losses here to 7. Jackson launch to the rim. Adam is grabbed. Realization of a worthy goal or idea. Idea. Be content while you are progressively realizing a worthy goal or throws it away, Robert.
Trying to keep out of those situations, so guys were literally getting reps for the first time on some of those plays. So there's been a major point of emphasis.
And referees with the house. Wednesday evening special Thanksgiving edition of Hey Coach of the Nick Saban Show. Hope we'll motorcycle.
The original Montgomery in.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike.
And Mike, everybody did a great job. Good night from the original Montgomery Inn on the Nation Station, 700 WLW.
Joseph Cadillac in Florence, Kentucky. It's the only one I know. Downtown Cincinnati. You don't have to go far.
It's working pretty good for what it is.
Joining the Army Reserve. Plus, you could earn an enlistment.
I realize this is not a radio that's really worth trying to do anything with, but at least we demonstrated what can happen. You know, the component doesn't necessarily have to fail, but its leads can corrode off and break and keep the radio from working. So, you know, in the wonderful world of electronics, never overlook all of your possibilities. Some of the things that can go wrong can be things that you would least suspect could happen. I remember several years ago a friend of mine brought me an old 1940s tube-type guitar amp that it was blowing 5Y3s, the rectifier tube for those who don't know. And to make a long story short, what was the problem was the audio output transformer primary winding had shorted to the core of the transformer, which was effectively shorting the B+ voltage to ground. Put a new transformer in, amp worked like a charm. But anyway, that ought to do it. Short and sweet. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a happy and safe Thanksgiving.